Welcome to the Student Auditor Information Session. Some of the things I'm going to go over is the auditor role, registration, the audit tool, your submission process, the quality assurance process, some resources that are available to you. So as an auditor, you're held accountable to our procedures and our auditor's agreement, which you signed in the 5-day course. When you go to register your audit, it'll pull up the roles and responsibilities. Just make sure you read that and it'll tell you all the ethical standards that you have to adhere to. If we find you're in violation of that, we do have the Auditor Performance Management Program that we start an investigation with if we find any boilerplating from other audits or things like that. To maintain your auditor certification, you must do 2 core audits within the 3 years, so C-cores don't count for that. You can do baselines though, and to only conduct approved audits. So as internal auditors, you can only do maintenance audits for your own company. All audits must be registered prior to starting, so don't use old ECA files to start an audit. And if any changes come to your registration, so you need to change the start date for any reason, you need to report that to us, or you wanted to add a different province, just let us know. Okay, so you have to perform the audit during their operational periods where they're most active, and this is for maintenance years too, so don't leave them to the last minute in December and say, whoops, we forgot to do our maintenance audit, let's do it now, and oh, we have no work sites available, what do we do? Typically, we want you to do the maintenance audit during the same time that the certification audit was performed, but we do understand that the busy periods change from year to year sometimes. So you're going to submit your audit report to us when you're finished it, and then we do the quality assurance process. This is more for externals, but any payment issues with the employer, we don't get involved. That's a contract between the external auditor and the company. And it's your responsibility as the auditor to provide that completed audit to the company after a quality assurance review. So I don't know how many of you have registered your audit already, but we'll just go through it quickly. So if you go to our website, you're going to sign in under the My Account. I'll just log in here. So once you've logged in, you go to your auditor portal on the right-hand side. And then you're going to register your audit and go through step by step. If it's a team audit, you'll also need to submit a sample plan, which I'll get to in a minute. And then once you've registered your audit, then we take a look at it, and if everything's good, we issue the okay to eCompliance to issue you your license key. So the license key will come via email from eCompliance, not from Energy Safety Canada. And that typically signals that you're good to go. You can start your audit on the start date that you chose. If you need to change anything, you click change request and then just let us know what the change is so that we're aware of it. And in the audit listing, so once you've registered, you'll have your audit listing. This is where you can upload your audit when you're completed to submit it. So you would just click on the company here and add your first day on site, your last on site, the audit score, and then upload your files. You can't actually put the organizational chart into the ECA file, the eCompliance file, so you will upload it here. Okay. There is a quick video on how to submit a core audit if you're having any troubles as well. If you are having troubles uploading it, just let us know right away or send an email to coreinfo@energysafetycanada.com. So the sample plan I was talking about is sample plan when you're determining how many interviews and work sites you need to go to. You don't necessarily have to submit that to us unless it's a team audit, but where you would find that information is on our website. And it's the criteria for determining representative interview sample. So where you would find that is on our main website under core program. And the very bottom of the page, you're going to go under resources. So audit worksite and interview sampling. Okay. So basically, you'll want to add up all the employees under the WCB accounts that you're auditing. So the industry codes too. And so you have a total of 365 people. You'll want to do a minimum of 53 interviews. That being said, we want to give yourself probably 2 more just in case one of them goes south or somebody wasn't able to answer questions very well. And then for worksite sampling, so it's based on the number of fixed sites you have under those accounts you'll be sampling. So every year you need to go to the head office. Plus, if you have 2 sites, you have to do those 2 every year regardless. If you have 3 to 4, you need to visit at least the head office plus 1 additional site. If you have field sites, we don't ask that you do 1/3 of the field sites. We're just getting a representative sample of the types of work that your company does. So for team audits, this is an example of a sample plan that I did up. So the lead auditor who will be writing the report will register the audit. And then here will be the total number of employees in the entire company and how many interviews they plan on doing. This here will break it down by the types of work sites and shifts or departments that this specific person will be doing. And then the next page would be the team auditor and same thing. And then the last page you would write out every single site, even if you're going or not, and let us know if you're going or not and who's going to be doing what. With that, you have to submit the organizational chart and a company profile. Here's the audit request form I was talking about. So just some information that you would need to fill out. So when it comes to payments, student qualification or baseline audits are free, so we don't charge the review fee for those. But student maintenance and standard review fees apply to those, whether or not you're a member or non-member company. So you must pay that prior to audit registration or getting that license key. Okay. So again, eCompliance will issue a license key. It'll be a code with a bunch of numbers. I think I have an example here. Show you. So the license key will be this long code. You'll want to copy it all and paste it into the eCompliance tool. So when you open up your eCompliance tool, you're just going to add it to the license here. And then it'll appear on the side. So I'm just going to pick one that I've opened already. So in your audit, the first page that it will normally open to is the select audit content. If you're doing a baseline, you still must pick include certificate of recognition. That will download all the audit questions. I've had some people just click no and then they call and say, where's all the audit questions? And then include injury return to work. That's only for BC companies who currently have that program. If you wanted to do that on your own, you can, but we just won't do it through QA. Okay, so then when you select the ones you want, you just click Start Audit. And then I'm just going to go back to the presentation quickly. Okay, so within your audit tool, there's a multi-role function. So if your company doesn't have designated supervisors, you're going to want to use this multi-role function for either the senior manager or the lead worker so that you can answer those supervisor questions. Otherwise, they score 0. So where you find that? Under your justification information, it's the very last one here. So say I didn't have any supervisors at this site, I can take one of the senior managers off and put him as a multi-role, and that will open up all the questions. Okay. So a worker defined by the audit tool is anyone who does not supervise others. So these could be project managers who don't actually manage people. We give them the worker interview questions so that they're not expected to answer questions about supervising employees. Okay, so the justification questions. So within the audit, there's these justification questions under your justification information that you'll have to answer. So this is where you look at the organizational chart and list the type of departments, operations, etc. that the company has and what you're including in the scope of the audit. How many years has the company had an active health and safety management system in place? If you're just applying as a brand new company, you would select less than 1 year. If you're in your first core cycle, then you would select the second one. And if you're in your core program in the second cycle, then you would hit 4 years plus. So then just check off interviewed all shifts. If you have no shifts at your company, just leave that blank. Did you interview new hires and experienced workers? Just give a little description about the shifts and how the company operates, how you selected your employees for interviews. Did you represent all the tasks performed? You say yes or no, and then just give a description of that. And if it's a multi-site audit, more than one work site, yes, and then just describe how you selected your work sites. The bottom one, e-compliance wasn't able to get rid of just because of the software. So you can describe if you had any multi-roles or contract workers, or just leave it NA. Okay. So the company profile, what we want in there is not promotional information, but we want to see what type of work the company provides, where do they operate, and do they have any equipment or machines or vehicles that they use. You can put how many people in there, just make sure it matches with what you're reporting in the audit as well. Right. So when you're collecting your field notes, they should be detailed enough for you to know what the heck you were talking about at that point, but they don't need to necessarily be formal at this time. We're not seeing them in the QA. They're for your personal use only. And you don't even have to put them in the e-compliance file if you don't want to. We have the info gathering tools on our website, and I'll just show you where those are. So again, under the core program, we have the core audit protocol. It is not there, but oh yes, audit info gathering tools. So they come in a zip file. You'll just have to download them. Okay. So for each directives, each interview level, and then observations, there's a gathering tool that you can print before you get to the site to take with you. Just so this is what it looks like. You might have used them in class. Just not asked means that it wasn't applicable to that person. A positive is a correct answer, negative, and then no comment is also a negative, so we don't really use that here. Just remember, all the interview notes are collective. So if you are entering them into your tool, they're going to appear in every interview that you do. Don't delete it out of there for the next interview. Okay. So your formal notes, that's after you've collected all your data, you're going to justify your scores awarded, why you're awarding those points or withholding them. And then, so respond to what the question is actually asking. Respond to each of the validation techniques. If you mush them all together, it's hard to find sometimes, so you might miss that in quality assurance, and especially for the reader. Provide a company-specific example, and don't contradict previous responses. So writing tips, keep your sentences short. For interviews, don't use so-and-so said this. Try and keep it very generic. So employees interviewed or senior managers interviewed said this. Avoid saying you and I. Keep it third person. The auditor saw this. For percentages, try and use the actual percentages instead of saying most or almost, some. You can use lists for examples and things like that. Okay. So there's two types of ways you can enter your interviews. You can do them through here. You can click on the little buttons, or you can go review interviews, start new interview. And you can do them as singles or bulk. So if you're out in a work site, you've collected like 2 or more worker interviews, you can do them as bulk. Hey, just put a random title like field workers. And then you can say, okay, I interviewed 8. But maybe this question only applied to 7 of them. So now for this question, I can change the denominator to 7. And maybe only 6 people gave me a correct answer. Okay. And then if you are doing a single, you would just do the same thing, but then not asked would be not applicable, a positive, or a negative, and just ignore no comments. Make sure you've selected the right site that they're at and the correct interview questions. Okay, so when you're done writing your report, make sure you edit and proofread it to make sure everything's been answered completely. There's no missing, like for multiple validation questions, you have documentation notes, but you're missing interview notes. So make sure that you're answering that properly. For interviews, make sure you have formal notes and that you didn't just paste your field notes in there. So strengths, even though there's a spot for it in the audit tool for every topic, so if I went to A here, topic summary, there's a spot for strengths and recommendations. You only need to put ones that you're going to include in the executive summary. So if something is very notable, you can make a note here and then mark it as a key strength. So I'll just show you what happens in the executive summary. You can view your key notes from any element and then you can copy it over. Just make sure your cursor's in the right spot. So that's a nice way of tracking that for your executive summary. QAing them in this spot here, we're only marking strengths in the executive summary. However, suggestions for improvement, you need to put them for every question that scores less than full points. So if it's not scoring 4 out of 4, this one here would need a suggestion for improvement. Okay. So strengths should be identifying positive aspects, should be company specific and relevant to the audit or the topic that you're putting the key strength for, and recognize the employer's efforts to maintain or excel in their program. So here's an example. Training records were up to date and complete. That's a poor example. It's not very specific. It's just say, yep, good job. A better example would be training was provided prior to the expiry and was tracked in a user-friendly system with easy exportable reports and reminders sent directly to the supervisors and workers. So it just gives you more of a story in what they're doing. So suggestions for improvement. They should describe what the deficiency was, what needs to be done, and if you wanted to go further, how the recommendation will improve the health and safety of this company, and it should be appropriate to what the deficiency was. So here's an example. Ensure everyone takes H2S training. Okay, well, you can assume the problem was that not everyone had H2S training, but is that very helpful? Is that a good recommendation? A better example would be review the training records found that several employees had expired H2S certificates, so it's recommended that the company look into tracking an alert system to ensure training is not lapsing. So the very last thing that you'll want to do is your executive summary. It should include an attention-getting statement, the audit score if you want, the purpose and scope of the audit, the employer's name, locations audited, and the audit time frame. A summary of key strengths and areas for improvement. We kind of suggest around 3 strengths and 3 improvements. Some people go to do it for each element. It's up to you. And then reference to what you did during the audit, a signature of the audit, and basic thank you and next steps. So that's what I showed you already, where you can post those key suggestions and strengths marked in the audit. And the documentation summary, so that's at the very bottom here, documentation summary. We're looking for a bulleted list of the documents you reviewed during your audit. So sometimes people have went through and pasted all their documentation notes again from the audit. So it's definitely not what we're looking for. When you're writing your formal notes, you have this kind of equation that we came up with. So for documentation and observation, your note should say what and how many were reviewed or observed, the score that you've awarded, and an example to validate that question. For interviews, you should say who was interviewed generally, so all employees, supervisors, and workers. The score awarded, so you can either use the tally, so 3 out of 4 workers indicated, or 75% of workers indicated, and then an example of a comment they gave to validate that question. So here's a few examples. So for G3C, it's about incident investigations and did they identify root causes. So the example note is root causes were found to be identified on 4 of 4 investigations sampled, so it tells you how many and what you looked at. Some examples of root causes identified included worker knowledge and skills training and leadership training, so that gives you the specific example. And the score, 100% awarded based on investigation reports having root causes identified. Questions with common errors. So A3B, that's asking if there's a frequency for tours of senior management to discuss safety with workers and observe their safe work practices. If there is no specific frequencies identified, then A3C, D, and E, asking to verify documentation to support the frequency, will score 0%. You can still ask the interview questions to verify if they're at least getting out there and touring and discussing and observing. And then G3, so incident investigations. If the company hasn't had any investigated incidents in the past 12 months, you can still ask the interview questions, but all documentation and observations for that topic, scores 0%. Unless you're an administrative-only company, then you can score NA for that topic. Health and safety representative, so this is new for Alberta. Where there's 5 to 19 people on a worksite for 90 days or more, you need a health and safety representative. Once it becomes 20 or more people at that worksite, you need a health and safety committee. For BC, it's 9 to 19 person on a site for 30 days or more. And in Saskatchewan, it's only 5 to 9 people where there's high hazard industries. So generating your report, I'll just go to the e-compliance tool. So once everything is green here, and you've had a note for every single question, then you would go to report, generate report, and it's going to pull up a preview of what your report's going to look like. So that's just your last chance to go through and make sure you've answered everything. When it looks good, you're going to export that to PDF, save it as your company name, so farm core report. Okay, so then you're going to submit this through the auditor portal along with your organizational chart, and then that comes to us for QA. So then when I do the QA, I'm going to look through and I'm going to add highlights where you need to change things and little sticky notes. So the note might say expiry is June 3rd, 2020. So then we send this to you. If there's corrections to be made, you'll just go through and look for these little sticky notes. You can click on them and read my note back to you. You're going to make the changes in the actual audit file, not the PDF file. Okay. If you have multiple sites, so in your justification, just if you visited, so I have 3 sites selected here. You have to do a documentation review for each site, even if you're only putting the collective comments in and scoring in the head office. You still have to go in and acknowledge that you've been there. So even though the scores will be all in A. Same for observations. Okay, so when you get the quality assurance, Stephen might give you a call and ask if you're able to make those in a day or 2. You technically have up to 15 days to make those revisions and up to 90 days total back and forth to get those revisions completed. To you. So core supportive documents, the core audit protocol, because the guidelines are only accessible through a link now, so you can see them in here. So if you want the guidelines, you can click on this little eye and it'll bring you directly to the question you need. This is not a printer-friendly version, so we do recommend you download the PDF copy off our website first. So you can get that here. So just make sure you download that and have it available for the guidelines. If you're not connected to the internet, here's where you could print all those info gathering tools if you need to go to field sites or you like to take hand notes. Summary of changes if you're interested. These were just errors that we fixed, so they're all fixed at this point. A comparison document if you wanted to see what the old audit tool looks like compared to the current one. And this formal hazard assessment scoring guide. So one of the auditors created this little spreadsheet, and it just kind of does the math for you for these cascading questions. So if the company had 10 positions, but you only found 7 of them, then it will automatically put that in the next question. So now out of those 7 positions, only 6 have tasks identified. It'll automatically calculate that score for you and cascade it down through the rest of those questions. It's a neat little tool for you guys if you have trouble with that area. Audit time frames. So for large audits, you have up to 45 days to collect your data and 21 days to write it. So in the audit tool, under your audit details, so your first day on site, you'll put that in. That'll start your 45-day countdown. As soon as you put your last day on site, that starts your 21-day countdown. So don't put your last day on site in until you're actually done your data collection. Otherwise, it will give you the wrong countdown date. But make sure that you do put that here so you're not late on your submission. Last time somebody was asking me about the questions that are not applicable. So I was just going to find one here in the audit results. Okay, so we'll go A3D. So if your company doesn't have middle managers, then you would select not applicable here, but make sure you define why you're applying not applicable. So this company doesn't have middle managers at this time. So any question you need to apply NA to will be in the audit results section. It won't have anything to do with an NA score in your review documentation or conduct interviews or record observations. So that's all I have for you right now. I hope this was helpful to you. Thank you for your time.